Nice to have you here. This is the 6th webcast called I Was Just Thinking. I'm Rudy Maxa. I'm a travel journalist. It's the first time you've joined me. And I like to start the show every Thursday afternoon with a glass of wine and a little 2 paragraphs about the region it's from. And I thought today I might do a Sauternes. We've done Champagne, we've done Burgundy, we've done Bordeaux. We even did a wine from Wisconsin. This is the Sauternes. Sauternes comes from the Bordeaux region of France. It is a sweet wine, which means the leaves, the grapes are left on the vines a little longer, so they begin to literally rot. Now, it's called noble rot, so that the name doesn't turn people off. It's been popular. The Romans first brought grape growing to the Bordeaux region, but it was the Dutch who figured out if you left the wine out, or left the white grapes on a little longer, they'd get much sweeter, and you'd have a sweet wine like this. It's said that this is a 2007, so it's 13 years old. It looks a little rusty. Some say that you shouldn't drink Sauternes until it's the color of a copper penny, a U.S. penny. This is a half bottle. I like to use half bottles because not a lot of Americans are big on sweet wines, and they're really a great way to either start a dinner or to finish a dinner. They're very good with foie gras. In fact, I brought my foie gras. I didn't open it up. I'll open it up tonight for dinner, but I got a little Petrosian foie gras for a whole block of it for dinner, and I'll have it with a little Sauternes. It is very sweet. It's about 13% sugar, but it tastes much sweeter. It's much a thicker wine. It's made of Sauvignon Blanc grapes and what else? I think I have it in my notes. Let me check that out. Because I didn't know. Oh, it's from Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, a little bit of Muscatel, and these grapes became very popular. This wine became very popular in about the 18th century. In fact, George Washington had his first taste of it late in the 18th century. Died in 1799. Thomas Jefferson had been to France, gave him a taste, and George Washington promptly ordered 50 bottles of the stuff. So I'm going to taste this. I've had this out for about a half an hour. You don't want to drink this too cold or you'll miss some of the notes in it. This is very good stuff. You may have heard of one particular Sauternes. The most famous one is called Chateau Yquem, spelled Y''Quem. Those puppies go for like $400 or $500 a bottle. They're quite expensive. And as they get older, they're even more expensive. But you don't need to get a Chateau Yquem to appreciate a Sauternes from the Bordeaux region of France. It's a maritime climate, so at night the vines get a little bit of mist from there's a river that goes right by most of the vineyards, and some from the Atlantic Ocean maybe even. And then the days are generally warm and cool in the summer. They can get a little frosty and frigid in the winter, but in the summer they're warm and cool. They're good for grape going. And as it gets colder in the fall, that's when the noble rot starts forming on the grapes, and they're picked and harvested, and then you've got a sweet wine. So try with foie gras. Michael, part of the team here, my friend Michael Traeger, has it for Thanksgiving dinner and has for years with his family. They have it before Thanksgiving because it goes great with heavy hors d'oeuvres. It's also said to go great with oysters. I've never tried it with oysters. I don't know. Maybe baked oysters? I don't know. Fresh oysters? It might be the saltiness of the oysters, the sweet of the Sauternes. I don't know. I'd love to try it sometime, and I will. Coming up today, we're going to talk with Andrew McCarthy, the actor, the director, and then a little later in life, he became a travel writer of great note. He'll be on about half after the hour. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by Doug Lansky from his home in Stockholm, Sweden. Doug is an American travel writer, but he's been based in Sweden, for decades. He married a doctor, a Swedish doctor, a woman who's a Swedish doctor. They had 4 children. He is single again, but he's been based in Stockholm for, as I say, probably will last him 30 or 40 years minimum. Speaks Swedish, travels a lot. He and his family often go. I know they once went to Brazil and spent 3 or 4 months, 5 months maybe, just sleeping on the beach in hammocks in Brazil. They had a house. But he's a big world traveler. He's very smart about travel topics and tourism topics. I want to talk to Doug not only about how things are going in Scandinavia tourism-wise, but also, Sweden is sort of the outlier when it comes to how to approach COVID-19, the coronavirus. Unlike their neighboring countries of Norway and Finland, they did not, and Denmark for that matter, they did not quarantine people. They suggested older folks stay home, which I think many did. But cafe life continued, and people were on the streets, unlike many towns in America. Their death rate is much higher than their neighbors. Their strategy, I think Doug will probably tell us, is that if they can get to the point of enough people being infected, it will go away. Now, whether it was worth the cost of all these deaths or not remains to be seen, but we'll talk to him about that and talk to him about how he sees tourism coming up in the future. Meanwhile, it's nice to have you here. We invite you to ask questions of our guests. If you have any questions on Sauternes, I'm welcome. I'll try to answer them. I'm not the world's expert on Sauternes, but I know a bit about Bordeaux and a little about some wines generally. Most of our viewers are actually coming from YouTube, which is interesting, and I understand not everybody in the middle of the afternoon, or if you're on the West Coast at noon, or if you're in France, as my daughter and granddaughters are, where it's, I think, 8 o'clock at night. It may not be a convenient time to plug in to watch Rudy and his guests talk for an hour, and I understand that. But you could always go to YouTube and type in Rudy Maxa and I Was Thinking, and you can see our past interviews with Samantha Brown, with Phil Caputo, with Andrew Zimmern, and other guests, particularly some travel experts. They'll be up there forever. But go ahead and run. You can watch a half an hour at a time, 20 minutes at a time. You can go back to them and so on. Dan Buettner, by the way, from Blue Zones, was on our very inaugural show, and that's been a very popular hour show to watch on YouTube. I come to you from my home in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I am sheltering in place and have been, I guess, for 7 or 8 weeks. I haven't counted. I don't think I've ever gone this long, and I bet Andrew and I'm certain Doug have not gotten this long without getting on a plane to go somewhere, for goodness sake. I'm not suffering. All my friends go, "Oh, doesn't it kill you? You can't get on a plane and go somewhere." I'm supposed to be in a lot of places in the last 7 weeks, but I was in none of them. It isn't all that bad. So we'll ask Doug Lansky how he feels about that. Let's see. What do we got word on Doug? By the way, Rick Steves, the Rick Steves video is up as well. On YouTube. If you go to just type in Rudy Maxa and Rick Steves, you'll see my conversation with him. That was a particularly interesting conversation. Let's see. We're looking for Doug Lansky to join us at any moment. Anybody got any word on that? I'm looking at my staff is on my phone. Tommy is in Northern California. Michael is in London, and they help coordinate guests and get people online and so on. So we're waiting to hear from Doug Lansky. Meanwhile, I know what I wanted to tell you right off the bat before we do anything else. If you fly Frontier Airlines ever, or if they fly somewhere you want to fly, today, Thursday, May 7th only, Frontier Airlines is offering all their nonstop flights in the United States, and for the future, if you buy today, for 1 cent. Now, by the time you add taxes and fees, it's $11. Now, you know Frontier, discount aircraft. If you're going to check luggage, that'll cost you some more money. If you want to choose your seat, it may cost you some more money. I don't fly Frontier, so I don't know what their rules are. But if Frontier flies to somewhere you regularly go to, and you know when you might want to be there over the next several months, $11 a flight when you include tax and fees. But it's only good today, Thursday, May 7th, as I broadcast live. So if you're watching this on YouTube after May 11th, that deal is no longer on the table. But I guess it's Frontier's way of just getting people on the plane and making some money with seat selection and luggage. I don't know how they're going to do that. But Frontier Airlines, just go to frontier.com and you can book your seats for 1 penny plus 11 cents in fees and taxes. You can also subscribe, by the way, when you go to the YouTube page, if you don't mind. Just hit subscribe, and then you'll be able to find those. You'll get alerts and updates when we post new ones. So if you happen to miss a webcast, you can do that too. What else? Oh, I was surprised to read in the Wall Street Journal a day or two ago that Carnival Cruises is starting 8 of their cruise ships sailing again in, I think it was June. Let me check. Yep, they're going to be going out of Miami. August 1, excuse me. August 1st, they're planning to send 9 of their ships, many of them, the Carnival Dream, the Carnival Freedom, the Carnival Vistan from Texas, the Carnival Horizon, Magic, and Sensation from Miami, the Breeze and Carnival Elation from Florida's Part Canaveral. Carnival says they chose those ports because they can easily be reached by car if you're nervous about flying. Although I got to say, if you're nervous about flying to get on a ship, you might be nervous about getting on a ship. Maybe you're not. I mean, the ships, all the cruise companies are swearing that the ships have been cleaned thoroughly and that everything is literally, pardon me for saying it, ship shape. The CDC, CDC has lifted its ban on cruise ships, so which they extended in March. And the cruise ship lines, like every other travel entity, are losing money hand over fist. What else can I plug? My newsletter. If you don't get my newsletter, I publish it every Thursday, and it's very personal. It's not a promotional item. I'm not selling tours on it. I'm not selling anything, DVDs or anything. But if you would like to receive it, if you go to maxatours.com and scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, that's all one word, Maxa, M-A-X-A tours.com, and scroll down to the bottom of the page, you will find a form you can fill out for the newsletter. And it's really sort of what I've been thinking this week. A lot of updates like that Frontier sale, for example, and some travel news that you might have missed in other media. What do we hear, Michael or Tommy, from Doug in Sweden? Anything? Anybody? Help me out here.
It'd be good if it was Doug, but I'm sorry you're stuck with me, man.
Well, his picture came up for some reason. Well, Alan,
I saw the picture up there. I thought, well, maybe I'm out.
Well, we were worried earlier before the show. I will be, we might as well see how the sausage is made here. We were worried we weren't going to be able to reach Andrew McCarthy because he had an older computer. And then he found he's peeking around the corner there. Then he found his right computer worked. Hi, Andrew.
I'm sure you're saying things about me, Rudy. I want to be able to hear him.
Well, I'm talking about the watching the sausage get made. Before the show, we were worried about your connectivity with your older computer. So I asked Allan Karl to be on standby, thinking Doug Lansky, my first guest, would be here, but we can't get Doug. So Allan Karl, meet Andrew McCarthy.
Andrew, how are you, man?
Good, man. It's not that my computer is old, for the record. It's that I'm a computer idiot.
You're old.
My wife luckily handled it for me.
Yeah, you need a child around 9 years old, like my little granddaughters who are 9 and 11, who can take my phone and show me all these things we can do. So Andrew McCarthy, of course, is the actor, the director, and then he horned into my territory and became a writer with National Geographic Traveler, which I'll never let him forget. I said, hey, I didn't come out there to start acting in Hollywood. Allan Karl, I've introduced him to our guests.
That story you were just telling was pretty good, though, Rudy.
I'm sorry?
That story you were just telling was pretty good.
Which one?
Well, I like the wine bit before.
Oh, the wine. Yeah, the Sauterne. Yeah, I do drink that.
You're drinking a Sauterne, huh?
Isn't it?
I think you should have a little foie gras with that. Can you get that still in Minnesota out there, Oh, no, you're kidding me. See, how did I know?
Petrosian, no less. So Andrew Allan is a former successful, we were in marketing before I knew you, weren't you?
Yeah, marketing, branding, digital marketing.
He made so much money, he bought a motorcycle. He's been traveling around the world for a couple of years, making TV shows and writing books. He wrote a very, very cool book. I showed it a minute ago, Alan. I'll show it. You can never show the cover.
This is awesome. Love that. I love that.
And it has to do with food and wine and motorcycles. And I was saying that Alan doesn't just go to a country to punch the ticket. He gets to know the community very well. He stays in places a long time. And is it fair to say you've gone around the world?
Yeah, I think I'm up to now 82 countries. But there was a 3-year trip. I did most of the world on that motorcycle. Chasing from the bill collectors was really the reason. I didn't really check out
the bill collectors. There's no way you could have chased. And your TV show was called.
It was called The Food Explorer.
Food Explorer, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know Andrew's a food guy too. He's not a wine guy right now, but he's a food guy. And I wanted to talk.
Whiskey's good.
That's true.
What did you go on?
I'm sorry?
What kind of motorcycle did you go on?
I went on a BMW F650 GS. So, GSs are popular. A lot of guys are on the big 1200. adventure bikes and do trips into, Mexico, Alaska, this kind
Did you
of
go
stuff.
alone?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a lonely guy. And Alan started a webcast, and I've watched him, and he has his motorcycle buddies on from around the world. And the first two I saw got on their motorcycle because of failed relationship. The third one actually had, I think, a girlfriend with him. But after the first two, I said, "What is this? What you do when you're heartbroken? You get on a motorcycle and go around the world? Are you a motorcycle guy at all, Andrew?"
No. I'm trying to teach my kid. I'm trying to teach my 6-year-old how to ride a bicycle. That's about as close as I get to a motorcycle.
Me as well. You want to make a smart remark? Go ahead. Go ahead, Alan.
Well, I always say it's not really about the motorcycle itself. It's really about what the motorcycle represents, like being open, having a different perspective, having all your senses reeling, and that that metaphor translates nicely to what I like to do when I travel, and that is to meet people. And when you're alone, that's the other thing. Traveling alone is puts you in a position where people are more willing to approach you, and certainly you're more willing to chat with them because you might be lost. And I think that's really what it is. So it's not like I'm out there wrenching on my motorcycle and talking about tires all day long. I think the bike is just a great way to see the world and also meet those people.
Well, Andrew went on a trip. He's gone on a couple quests, but one of the pieces I remember he wrote for National Geographic Traveler was in search of his family. He always thought he was from the Cork region of Ireland. He didn't really know. His family was a little vague on where Grandpa and Great-Grandpa came from. And then he did a DNA test, and he found a letter, I think, Andrew, and you contacted a family member, and the Catholic Church in Ireland keeps meticulous records, and you found out you were a Kerry man, weren't you?
Yeah, that's sort of like finding out that you were a Yankee fan and all the time you thought you were a Boston Red Sox fan. Yeah, so that changed everything. And my wife is Irish, so all these things mean a lot. Her father's from Kerry and her mother's from Cork, so all our alliances shifted. But and then I went over and I met all my, I think, 26 of my closest and dearest relatives, which was quite a day. And then they came to America, actually, and I took them out, which was...
How many came to America?
Like a dozen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you flustered? I mean, just remembering all the names? I mean, getting the relationship?
Luckily they had other things to do and I was a small part of their trip, but like we met in restaurants a few times and they're country folk. And so they were real quiet. And, they were in the big city and it was a challenge. But, when you're talking about the Catholic Church, though, we went down to the church to look at our records, to look up our records. And I have some doubt because on the page, these ancient pages that we flipped to do it, right where my great-great-grandfather was supposed to be, it was very modern Bic ink that was sort of written in on this thing. So I'm not sure how reliable it all was. But they were very nice people, and I'm still in touch with them, and they claim to be my relatives, so I have no idea, really.
Were they, when you went to visit them, were they quiet? They didn't seem to be in the pictures in National Geographic Traveler, or the picture that I saw.
No, they were at home at that point. People at home are, and they gave out the bread and cucumber sandwich, the cucumber and butter sandwiches, and the tea was flowing, and then the whiskey was flowing, and then we were dancing, and then it was just like Irish 101.
And you ran into a whole lot of McCarthy's, like every gas station and pub, everyone you went to.
Well, it's like Smith in Ireland, McCarthy, particularly down south. When you were on your bike, did you go to Ireland?
I didn't. I chose to go to those more of the developing world. So I spent a lot of time in South America and Africa and in the Middle East. I've actually never been in all those countries. I've been to England, but I've never been to Ireland yet.
I'm very surprised at that.
Yeah, I know.
It's probably too tame for you. But Ireland's one of those great places that seems exactly like what you think it's going to be like. And particularly, you're talking about, being alone. I mean, you're not alone for 5 minutes in Ireland before they start chatting with you, especially if you got a bike. You pull up on a bike, they'll be good. Now, what's that you got? And off you go, and you'll have buddies.
Go ahead, Alan.
No, I'm just looking forward to it. I got to put that, once this whole thing blows over, it will, won't it, Rudy?
I promise it will. The roads are great in Ireland for a bike, I would think. They're narrow and they're smooth. Yeah, great riding. Andrew, bring us up to date on what you are doing now. Are you directing? Are you acting? Are you writing?
I'm largely directing. Right now, I'm sitting doing nothing, waiting for the world to start again. I have been directing television shows mostly. I was just right when we shut down. I was doing a show called Blacklist that I do a lot of, and I was doing a show called The Sinner. So that's what I'm doing mostly. And then I was acting a bit on a show called Good Girls as well. And I've actually been doing a little writing. I was writing the memoir I swore I would never write, which is about my Brat Pack days in the 80s. So I've been digging up on my youth, and it's all.
Do you have a lot of, besides obviously the movies? Do you have a lot of stuff you kept from that time that reminded you of things you can put in a book?
I have nothing. I kept nothing at the time, and
who keeps anything, right? Nobody keeps anything as a kid.
Especially when you're young and you're just like, no, I kept nothing. I took no pictures because we didn't have phones then, but. And so I really had very few things, and I used to drink a little bit, so I didn't remember an awful lot actually.
You wrote another book, which was
I wrote a travel book. Yeah.
You wrote a travel book, a very personal book in which you were sort of searching for yourself, and you were trying to figure out why you seemed afraid of commitment. You had
what it really was I was trying to figure out how to, I was about to get married, and I was having trouble dealing with the notion, but really the notion was about how do we have that inherent separation? Like that's what my first question to you is: did you travel alone on your bike trip? Yeah. Like I always love to travel alone. That's how I prefer to travel, for all the reasons you said, to meet people, but also to meet myself in a very real way, and. So I love that. I love solitude, and yet I loved this woman and my family and kids. And how do you reconcile these two seemingly irreconcilable aspects of life? And so that's really what I wrote. And I wrote that, trying to find that answer, couched in a travel book, because I did the thing that any good traveler would do. In knowing that I'm about to get married to you and spend the rest of my life with you, I ran away from you for 6 months and disappeared.
And that book is called The Longest Way Home, One Man with the Courage to Settle Down, The Longest Way Home. You also wrote a novel called Just Fly Away. Was that any fun, writing a novel?
Yeah, it was. It was fun because, as you all know, I'd originally written, here's another long story. I wrote a version of the novel, and I worked on it for a number of years, and I was the only one that thought it was any good. And then one day one of the characters appealed to me that it had been a very minor character in the book, and the whole book shifted on its ear and became something else entirely. So, and then the book made sense and worked well. And it just made me really aware how important process is to everything. I never would have written that book. I never would have set out to write the book that I ended up writing. But because of all the process and all the trial and error and all the, it's never the first idea that's it. It's that idea and that idea and that idea and that idea that leads to, oh, there it is. So just trusting and knowing the process, whether it's creative process or any kind of process, is of value. Like it took me 7 years to write a silly little book, Well,
that's not unusual. How long did it take you to do works, Allan?
That 3 years. So it's literally, that book took me the same amount of time it did that I traveled around the world, because I was 3 years on the bike and 3 years to put that together. But, there was a lot of complexities. There's a recipe in there from each of the different countries I went to, and I had to, test the recipes, hired a food photographer to shoot those recipes, a lot of time. So that's what I was going to ask you. It took you 7 years to write?
To write the novel, it took me 7 years. To write the travel book, it was 8 months, I believe.
Yeah. He did other things while he was doing that.
I did do other things. Yes, luckily I have 3 kids to feed. Yeah, I had to do other things.
Well, we have a question for you, a long question for you, Andrew. Let me read it to you. This is: the 80s have had quite a have had a resurgence for quite some time now, with no end in sight. Yes, Andrew hopes that because he's writing a book on it. You obviously are immortalized by some of your 80s movies, Pretty in Pink, so many, and have continued that success as an actor and director. Now younger generations are discovering you and your legacy. With a whole new world for you in travel writing and appearing at the travel adventure shows, do you feel the past has contributed to this new journey, and what aspects of that have you enjoyed or not?
Well, I like that Eugene O'Neill line. Like the past is the present, it's the future too. You know what I mean? I would not be doing everything just leads to the next thing. People have said to me, how did you go from being an actor to a travel writer? That's a really weird transition. And to me, I get why someone would say that. They're the same thing. You know, I felt like me when I started acting. I felt when I was a young guy, I found myself in acting. I went, there I am. That's me. I feel like as my wife is Irish, she has all these good Irish sayings. It's like, I feel like myself from the toes up. When I first acted at 15, I was like, there I am. That's what I'm doing. I'm not listening to anybody else. I'm not listening to my parents. I'm not listening to any grown-ups who know better. I have no idea how to do it. It's what I'm doing. And I did. And it was all lucky and all this kind of stuff, but that's where I was going. And then, you know, cut to long story longer, travel really changed my life. You know, I took one trip, I walked across the Camino de Santiago, and it changed my life.
What prompted you to do that? Let me sorry to interrupt.
I picked up a book by a guy named Jack Hitt called Off the Road. And I read it, and suddenly it spoke to me. And I said, I'm going to go do that. And a week later, I was walking across Spain. And, you know, it was a miserable trip. I hated every step of it until, you know, I had this sort of nervous breakdown, as it were, in the middle of a field of wheat. And I had a sort of white light revelation that fear had dominated so much of my life in that moment, you know, and that changed me. I was changed. It was sort of before that moment and after that moment. And so I kept traveling, and then that's how I started to write about travel.
How old were you when that happened, Andrew?
I was 25, 30. It was like 28 years ago. So I'm 57. You do the math. I can't. It was a long time ago. And so I felt like, you know, what, by the side of the barn, when I had that white light experience of fear, I had the same feeling I did when I was a young actor, like, oh, there I am. It's a consequence, a natural thing for me to write about travel and stuff, because underneath every travel story I write is that notion that, you know this, you guys know this, that travel matters. It's not something frivolous. It's not a vacation for trophies. It's like, it matters. It changes you. It's an important thing in your life if you let it be. And, you know, that great Mark Twain line, travel's fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. Travel changes the world and changes our view of the world when we go. So anyway, to me, they were sort of the same thing. I felt like me when I did both things. And so I don't know if that answers that question at all.
No, I think it does.
Very well. Yeah.
Have you taken are the kids travelers? Are your kids natural travelers?
Yeah, my kid. I mean, of course, my wife's from Ireland, like I say, so we go back to Ireland all the time. And traveling with kids is, you know, it's awful. It's a nightmare, and it's fantastic. And you know, they love anything about it. It's like going through the security. They're like, "Oh, Dad, you buzzed!" You know, everything's an adventure to them.
Simple pleasures, right? Exactly.
So yeah, my kids are great at it. You know, I mean, as long as we have enough snacks and we take a nap, we're all fine.
Right. And the kids too.
Yeah, right. But totally true.
Alan, I think I recall, you correct me if I'm wrong, because I've seen so much of your stuff. There have been a couple of times when you were scared, when you were stopped by police, or, I mean, I know in Croatia you had some pretty crucial stuff stolen from your motorbike, but tell me about moments where you thought maybe this wasn't such a good idea.
You know, to be honest with you, it's hard for me to say something that I was ever afraid. If there was everything I was afraid of, it had less to do with the people or the circumstances of the government, the border crossings, the customs checks, and all of that stuff. Is a road, a gnarly road, when you know it's sandy, it's rocky, and I broke my leg, by the way, in the middle of the Altiplano in Bolivia on a 300-mile dirt road that goes from the highest city in the world, San Luis de Potosí, to the Salar de Uyuni, which is the largest salt flat in the world. It's about.
Unfortunately, there are good hospitals right there, right? So
a lot of good hospitals. I mean, this is crazy. What happened is there was only one little settlement between Uyuni and this San Luis Potosí, and it was just riddled with mud because that's where all the buses stop and take all the villagers who raise llamas and quinoa and all the stuff around. And it had rained the day before, so I was navigating that mud, and the bike slipped out from under me. I fell this way, and then my bike, which weighs about 400 pounds, and I'm carrying about 150 pounds of all my earthly belongings at the time, landed on top of me and crushed that leg. So,
yeah. What did you do?
So what I did immediately is a crowd gathered around me, and it's a great story. I could tell it going, but you know, it's about noon and it's 14,000 feet high in the Andes, and I'm lying there. My bike is there. I wrench myself out from under the bike, but this, because there is a settlement, there are people around. But that high noon, Altiplano Bolivian sun is burning down. You can see, my head, it shines right here. And that's the worst thing for me, is to be in that sun. And as I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do, the next thing I know, there's two boys that come up. I mean, I kind of lift open the visor of the helmet, and each of them have an umbrella, and they go open up an umbrella and open up an umbrella. And there I am, suddenly shaded, looking up into the eyes of these two angels, And I've got a little command of Spanish at that point. And before I know it, there is actually a little concrete brick block building about a kilometer down the road. And they find a car, get me in there. And that's kind of a medical center. But yet there's no nurses, there's no doctors, there's no medical supplies. There's a bed and a few sheets and some, analgesics. And that was about it. So I was able to eventually get a ride back. It took about 14 hours before we could get what they called an ambulance to take me back to San Luis de Potosí. And there my medevac insurance company went into action, and even they couldn't get me out of there fast enough. And I won't tell the whole story, but the last thing I'll say is that there is an airport in San Luis Potosí. It was brand new, about a year and a half, but it had never been opened. Why? Well, because people there are too poor to fly, and sitting at about 14,000 feet high in the Andes, it's one of the most dangerous airports to fly in and out of. And the medevac insurance company, after 3 days, finally got a guy in a Cessna to come from La Paz. And he took 3 attempts. First 2, he couldn't because of the clouds and the aviation problems you have with thin air. And he was almost going to go back. He did one more time, came down there, and they picked me up and took me to Santa Cruz de la Sierra, which is right in the Amazon basin. And from there, it took a couple more flights, and I got back to the States, left the bike in Bolivia.
So your leg was still broken when you got back to the States?
Yeah. I eventually got to Newport Beach Hoag Hospital, where a Dr. Chang, who looked like he was about 15, was my doctor, and he put the pieces back together. So I've got about 4 screws.
Where was the motorcycle?
The motorcycle stayed in Bolivia, and I believe it or not, in this day and age, I was managed to find somebody to get the bike, take it to the to San Luis Potosí in the back of a chicken truck or something like that, And then I managed to get, there's a motorcycle guy, through referral, a guy who owns several of the TV and radio stations in Bolivia, had a home and he owned the station in San Luis, and he got his general manager there to store my bike until I got strong enough to come back. And I went back. And it's funny, people used to say, oh, he'll never be there. You'll never see that bike again. But no, it was there. And when I got there, of course, I needed a new battery, but that was about it. Happy
ending. Have you ever been scared, Andrew, traveling?
For my safety, not often, I'm sure I'm a fearful person in many ways. So, I think I'm confronted with fear a lot, that I feel, I think I was walking down the street in Harare once, and I thought, I shouldn't be on the street, and turned back and stuff like that. But I think fear is a cunning foe. Like this time right now, we're all so fearful, that I think, that's why I traveled, was to sort of walk through fear, to obliterate fear in me. When this is finished, I'm planning on walking the Camino de Santiago again after all these years, because that was the first place I discovered that fear dominated my life. And with all this fear that's around us, I thought, and because Spain has been so hard hit, I thought it would be such an interesting thing to go back there and revisit the fear and go back to those places and see what's happening in that country now. And I thought it would be a good thing to do. My wife will be happy to get rid of me for a month after being together for so long. So I'm looking forward the minute and I've already had the virus, so I feel safe in the world. So the minute we're allowed to go, that's where I'm going walking across Spain. Because I think it's a good speed. Walking is a good speed to find out people's stories too, because a lot of people are going to have a lot of stories to tell about what they've been through.
You had the virus already? Was it bad?
I had a very mild case of it, and I felt like someone was sitting on my chest and had a fever, but just for a couple of days, and then the test.
How's the family? Is the family all right?
Everyone was fine. Everyone just no one else had symptoms except me, and we all have the antibodies now, so we sort of feel like we're just a get out of jail free card,
Exactly. So how are you doing on your autobiography? Are you 10% into it, or just starting? Or you?
It's done. I'm just doing an edit. I'm doing a polish edit. So.
And the title?
It's called Brat.
Okay.
An 80s story. It's called Brat.
Did you interview any of the past your past?
No, I didn't. No, I thought about whether I would do that kind of thing, and then I really came to the conclusion that it was really something that I was interested in my version of the truth, because that's what I've lived with. Wasn't doing a reportage and finding out what other people. It was like, what was my experience of it? Because it was such a profound, big experience for me at the time, and so life forming, and yet I just sort of ran away from it so quickly. So I've never really looked at it. So it was just an interesting thing to.
Do you think you appreciated it while it was happening? I mean, was there a particular movie, San Elmo's Fire, Pretty in
There were moments, and sure, you appreciate a lot of it. What's happening? Paul Theroux, I think, had that great line. He said he's always had the ability to know when he's happy, and I can't say that I've always had that. So in hindsight, I often go, "Oh, those were great times. That was a great time." But at the time, you often just think, "Oh, Jesus, I got to get this out." It's the stress of it all. So yeah, it was an amazing singular time, and I was a young kid who didn't know anything else. You know what I mean? It's like, this is our life. So like when you're growing up and your parents are a certain way, you just think that's the way that it is. And then you grow up and you kind of go, well, maybe not all parents were like that. Although mine were fine. But so it was, it was a singular time, and it was certainly it was ultimately very isolating, and I'm a person that can tend to be isolated anyway. So it was something I ran from once it was over.
Your wife has her hands full. The stuff you've admitted to. I'm fearful most of the time. I run away from stuff.
Most of us are fearful a huge amount of time, and we do so many things.
Your wife on this webcast. I want to find out what she's got the stories.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. You were about to defend yourself. Go ahead.
No, it's not.
Particularly, I haven't known you intimately enough to know your unhappy times, but I've always seen you as happy, and you're a good speaker at the Travel and Adventure shows. Let me ask Alan if Andrew's talked about two cases. I mean, where travel has been revelatory to him personally, to his psyche, to who he is, to what he wants. Are you markedly different than when you started your around the world trips on your bike?
It's absolutely. Travel is humbling. It opens your with open eyes. It opens your mind to the beauty of diversity and the kindness of strangers. And, you find that those are the people who have so little are the ones willing to give so much. Yet the ones that have so much are trying to make sure and protect that. And I find that, somebody reviewed my book and said that I was glamorizing poverty or something like that, which is not it at all. It's these people, as Andrew just said, that they grew up, that's what they know. All of a sudden I'm like this little alien coming in a fancy motorcycle suit and all the rest of that, and like, who is this guy? And but yet even so, they're more curious about me, I think, than I am about them. So it's humbling, and it's the beauty of the planet, and it's not so much I've seen some amazing vistas, been to great museums, and experienced great cathedrals, ruins. But 10 years after you go visit a place, you hardly can remember a particular painting or the story of this, these etchings on the side of a mountain, or these reliefs on the side of a mountain, but you'll remember the little souvenir lady sitting there who you sit down with and talk to and learned a little about here. And those are those moments that really do it for me.
When you talked about, sorry to interrupt you there, Rudy, but when you talked about those kids who open the umbrella over you, that to me is traveling. I was in Ethiopia once. You reminded me, and I hadn't thought of it in a long time. I was arrested in Ethiopia and as the cop was marching me with a gun pointed at my back, there was this little kid who came running up to me, and he just went, "Obama!" And I'm like, yeah. And so I corralled this kid to come walking with me, because I figured if I had a little kid next to me, I'd never be shot. So, but it's like there are always these little kids, these angels that just appear and help us, And the little kid one ended up talking to the cop and having him let me go and everything. This little 10-year-old child. And again, you said another word that I find, the curiosity. It is the most important thing in a traveler, and it's just most of the world and is so curious. And I do think that's what money makes us less curious. We get comfortable and we get less curious. And I think
Yeah, you know, it's funny you say it. When it's one of my things. I sign every book, not just my name. I put "Stay curious and never stop exploring," and that's kind of my mantras right there. And I think I did that before North Face stole it as a tagline. I don't know, the "never stop exploring" part, but yeah, I agree, Andrew. It's curiosity. That's we need to work hard to keep that as we grow older, especially, and more affluent, I guess. Or
Andrew, you quoted Paul Theroux. I'll give him another quote. And one of our participants in the audience, Douglas, said, "It's when things go wrong that you remember."
Oh, sure.
And it's so that you remember a trip, I should say, is what I'm talking about. And you know, I've told this story before, and I don't know if either of you know, but when I was shooting in Uzbekistan, I was thrown off a camel. And a broken right shoulder, stitches in the head. I was out. My crew thought I was dead. We have it on video. And I tell people, it's when they say, "Oh, I'm worried if I go to France, I won't be able to speak." I said, "Don't worry about the speaking. And if you take a wrong turn, that's when things get interesting." That I think we all believe, and Paul Theroux certainly has talked about. And I said, "Listen, when I sit down at a dinner party and people say, 'Oh, you did a show on where'd you get back from?' I say, 'Oh, I got back from French Polynesia doing a show, and the beaches were gorgeous. The water was translucent.' I mean, they're like, yeah. I see so many pictures, postcards, and magazine pieces on it. But if you say, well, I was over in Uzbekistan doing a Silk Road show, that's mildly interesting. But you know, I got thrown off a camel, broke my shoulder. Then they want to hear the story.
Yeah,
people want to hear about it, and that's how. I mean, I certainly remember that trip more vividly than I remember shooting a show in London, which is pretty easy. Everybody speaks the language, more or less. So.
Yeah, it's travel around that you hope for something to go wrong, and then you know you have a story. I mean, when I was being arrested in Ethiopia that time, my first thing was when this guy was marching me down the street is, "I have my lead." That was the first. Why were you arrested? I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Shouldn't have been. So they kicked me out. I didn't leave. I was in a church where they were doing an exorcism. They're Coptic Christian church, and I was in Lalibela, and you know those beautiful stone-hewn churches. And anyway, I was told to leave, and I didn't leave. I pretended to leave. So he just.
I was once in Cairo with travel writer Peter Greenberg, and we decided to go to oh my gosh, the town up on the river, on the canal. Oh my gosh, why can I not remember the name of it? It's I call it the town that time forgot. It used to be a very important trading town, and we went up there, and I'll think of it in a second. If either of you, it wasn't that. It was a small town, dusty, but very well known name, except to me at this moment, and it's also where during the Arab-Israeli War, the Israelis bombed a whole lot of Egyptian ships before they could get out of the port, and so they're lying under the water. And so we thought, well, it'd be interesting to hire a little boat and go and look down under the water at the boats. Well, it turns out it was considered a military property, and we were arrested and we were taken into this big old stone building, nobody there, huge, enormous office with some guy sitting at a desk way down at the end. And he said, we have a problem here. We got a problem here. Well, yeah, I'm sorry, we didn't know. We had a letter from the Egyptian Tourism Bureau saying we're legitimate journalists, we're allowed to do stuff, but apparently we weren't allowed to go onto this water. And he said, you could go to jail. I don't know. And then he thought, unless, maybe we should talk about some consideration. I'm a considerate guy. And I turned to Peter, he said, no, consideration, Rudy. And so we thought, well, how much
consideration do you want? I got 20, 30, 40.
It was all couched under getting the right thing stamped.
Yeah.
And so we came up with 10 or 20 bucks, and he summoned somebody in. He gave him paper. Guy runs out. He comes back. There's stamps all over this paper and signatures, and we had him sign it. And then he turned to us and he said, I think you're almost out. Have you ever been to Disney World? And we both said, well, yes, actually we have. And he opened a drawer in this dust. It's one of these things where the sunlight was coming in shafts and the dust was all in this. It was like out of a movie. Like they had to make it look like this. And here are all these little Polaroids of him with his kids at Disney World. And clearly he had done something wrong in the Egyptian military because he was assigned to, right on the tip of my tongue. But he could talk about Disney World with no one because no one had ever been there except me and Peter. And so we had to look at every single, that's Mickey. I love Mickey Mouse. Yeah, we're all great. And we all left as great friends. But it was, and again, that's how I remember my visit to, I keep wanting to say Siam, but obviously that's Thailand. It's not Siam. So, I'll think of it. Anyway, it dovetails with your story about getting arrested and getting rescued. We got rescued by Disney World, basically, and a little bit of consideration. You've had to pay some consideration, Alan, and traveling, haven't you, at Borders?
Oh, absolutely. I was just thinking actually when I have not had the gun held to my head. I've had a lot of guns around me, so I can't imagine what I would do in a situation like that. And I've been to Lalibela, and I love that place. But I was in Azerbaijan this past summer, and I was traveling back from Baku.
You're in Azerbaijan?
Azerbaijan, yeah.
Okay.
And I was coming back into Georgia to Tbilisi. As you can't, I'm actually going to go to Turkey, but you can't go through Armenia, and it's a big mess over there. But they were working on construction on a road, and I didn't know which way the road was. And they have police checkpoints usually on the side of the road, and this construction was right by a police checkpoint. And I, for a fraction of a second, went over the line to go in. I thought was being directed, so I crossed the line in the center of the road. And about 10 minutes later, I'm waved by a cop, and he's pull over, and he's got somebody else over there. And while he says, stay there while he's writing the ticket or whatever he's doing with the other guy he's got pulled over. And I take out my phone and I take a picture of the cop because it's a cop car in there. And by the time I get over there, he realizes I took a picture of the pocket. He's like, no, you can't do that. He insists that I give him my phone. And it was I was sending the picture to another guy in Baku, who if I had a problem with the cops, I could get to him. That's I was taking the picture. So the photo was taken in WhatsApp. And, WhatsApp usually archives those photos in its own thing. Well, this cop knew exactly how to delete. I later thought, I still have that photo. But no, it was all gone. And in the end, he showed me a HD quality video of me on my motorcycle crossing the line. That's how he said, I can prove you. So they've got cameras everywhere. Crazy.
Good news. Port Said.
Port Said.
Port Said. I know it's a famous name. I just couldn't think of it. It was very. Sorry to go back to my story, Alan, after your good story, but Port Said, even though there was no commercial boat traffic, I don't think there at all. There was a duty-free shop, and we went into it, and I swear everything was covered with dust, and there was like one bottle of English leather men's cologne in the men's cologne section. One bottle, 2 bottles of scotch. It was so. We wrote a story about it. The town that time forgot. He and I for the Washington Post and LA Times Syndicate. Port Said has been left behind the sands of time. That guy, as I said, definitely did something wrong in his military career. But where are you going when this all? Well, you're going to go walk a religious trail. What about you, Alan?
I really want to go to Uzbekistan, frankly. And I'm not saying that because you said it. My motorcycle is sitting in Athens right now. And I was supposed to go back in June. And I circumnavigated the Black Sea last year. And I was deciding whether or not I really want to go to Crete. Never been there. So I was going to spend some time in Crete. And I'd have about 3 or 4 months. And either from Crete, go to Sicily, and then to Algiers, maybe, and do Northern Africa. It's a part I haven't done. I've never been to Morocco. Or I would go back through Turkey, back through Georgia, and catch a boat across the Caspian to, Kazakhstan or Turkmenistan, and, do all of the stands and head to Mongolia. That's really where I want to go.
Are you going to write about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
In Uzbekistan, in the town of Hiva, spelled Khiva, you don't pronounce the K, Hiva, there is one camel. Her name is Catherine. She's under a tree with a guy holding her, and for 50 cents, you put your kid on the camel, takes a picture, take it off.
That's the
Don't
one.
get on that camel. You can get on for a picture. Don't ever do as we did. Say, we want to put our host for the end of the show on the camel with a big Uzbek and walking along and delivering a line to the camera, at which point the owner of the camel, when we first proposed it, said, not good idea. $50 was a better idea. We should have gone with the first one. What about the family, Andrew? Where do they want to go?
My wife wants to go back to Ireland and see her family because they've been so sort of quarantined off.
Yeah, sure.
So she'll go back there and see them.
With the kids? With you? With the kids?
Yeah, with the kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where do you go? Cork or Kerry? Or both?
What's that?
Where do you go? Cork or Kerry?
I try and straddle the line now. It depends whether I'm talking to my mother-in-law or my father-in-law, really.
Oh, that's right. Her parents are from two different, you said, right?
Yeah, they're both, one's from Kerry, one's from Cork, yeah. So,
and do they passionately hold those places? And I mean,
yeah, no, it's a really big deal in Ireland to it is like being a Yankee or a Red Sox fan. I mean, it's a big deal. Yeah, it's utterly ridiculous, but to us, but Are
you doing your walk before that or after that?
I'll probably just the second we're sort of sprung and they're sprung in Spain, I'll go. Yeah.
Okay, but you wouldn't do that in the dead of summer, would you?
I mean, I did it the first time in the dead of summer, and I have no, it's hot and all. But I mean, in a certain way, you're supposed to arrive in Santiago on the July 25th, which is the feast day of St. James, which is the apostle's name for it. But I'll go whenever. I'm also very curious to see how things will be reopening and whatnot. So I'd like to go right away.
Alex Eaton asks, Andrew, how is your Gaelic?
There is no Gaelic.
There is no Gaelic. You did a nice Irish accent at the opening of this webcast.
No, my Irish accent is like an embarrassment to my wife. No, it's terrible, Rudy. You just have a bad ear as I do.
Do one more to ask me how I am today. What's going on?
No.
Did your wife retain her Irish accent?
She has, yeah.
Well, I'm surprised you haven't been able to mimic it like a parrot.
Terrible ear, and for an actor, I have a really bad ear. So what are you going to do?
Do you have any accent?
Where is Andrew? Where are you right now? Are you in?
I'm upstate New York in near Copic right on a lake, which is beautiful.
Okay, cool.
On one of the Finger Lakes?
The city. Sorry?
Are you on one of the Finger Lakes? No.
No, I'm not that far up. Just up in Columbia County.
Oh, okay. And we find you today, Alan, in Southern California, right?
Yeah, Encinitas, California. Just a kilometer or so over there is the beach, which is just opened on Monday.
And have you been?
I have. I did. Where Encinitas is, we've got these big bluffs. So the stairs going down at this particular beach that I go to were still closed at that point. But I got I didn't get my toes in the sand yet, but I will be doing that today.
Really? Okay. Well, the Mississippi River is literally, I can throw a stone into it from my balcony here, which surprised me. I didn't know the Mississippi, by the way. If you ever want to win a bet in a bar, where does the Mississippi River start? It starts in Minnesota. I remember the first time I came here to give a speech decades ago, the guy's driving me across the river. And I said, what river is this? He says, oh, it's Mississippi. I said, yeah, I really want to know what. He said, what's the Mississippi? I said, no, seriously, I'm sort of a travel writer, and it's important to me to know what river this is. He got mad. He said, it's the Mississippi. Where do you think the Mississippi begins? And, if you're an East Coast guy like I was, D.C., New York, Mississippi is like New Orleans, it's down there somewhere. Right? Well, it turns out it starts as a little creek in Itasca, Minnesota. So I now learned that. But a lot of people don't know that. You can win bar bets, at least on the East Coast and probably the West Coast with that too. So, because you guys just change planes here. So
that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're great. You're both great to take time out of your day. I do love doing this webcast now because I can get almost everybody. I'm usually so busy. I got a movie to do. I got to direct a movie. I'm in Afghanistan. I'm in Uzbekistan. Now it's like, yeah, okay, Thursday afternoon. Yeah, what the hell?
But don't you find the less you're doing, the less you're able to do?
Yes.
I can't so little right now. If you want something done, give it to the busiest person is really true. I mean, I accomplish so little right now. It's shocking.
If I didn't have to do this webcast or weekend radio show and a weekend newsletter, I don't know. That's how I know what day it is. But I have receipts from June that I've got to give to my bookkeeper, piled up like this all over the floor. And I was traveling. I could never take the time, and figure, was that a restaurant? It's in some language. And I thought, okay, when this started 7 weeks ago, I thought, this is it. No tourists. I'm not leading any tourists this year. Not doing any. I've probably worked 3 hours on it in 7 weeks, and it's driving me nuts, and I can't figure it out. I got nothing else to do. I'm stuck here. Here are the receipts. What's the problem?
Productivity is driven by deadlines, and right now we don't know anything. We have no deadline.
Yeah, but it's also driven by deadlines for money, and this is 2019. Maybe I don't know if I'm going to get money back from the tax guy, but I might. So, I do have an incentive. I'm not incentive free on this one.
It's the wine, Rudy.
Drinking wine beginning in the afternoon every day.
Yeah, at noon is preventing those receipts from getting done.
Allan Karl, Andrew McCarthy. I didn't plan to have you on together, but it sure was fun doing it with you.
This was good.
I like that. Like, first time I've had two guests on, Andrew, at the same time. Of course, I'm only in the 6th week, but it works nicely.
Yeah, it's fun. Thanks.
Particularly with two smart guys like you. Thank you very much. Again, you can see this on YouTube if you came in late. It'll be posted by tomorrow afternoon, probably. And you can go back and send it to friends, whatever you'd like. Thank you for joining us, Andrew. Thank you for filling in, Alan. And bless you all on your future travels. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Nice to see you.
Meeting you, Andrew. And thank you, Rudy.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.